right. Hello. Hi, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to our webinar, How to Elevate Operations with Effective Resource Management. My name is Nora, and I'm so excited to be your LEAP webinar host today. As a new work and transformation consultant, I'm passionate about unleashing the potential of organizations and people by creating more adaptive, soulful, and joyful ways of working. My mission is to inspire new ways of thinking, working, and being. And I'm so thrilled to guide you through today's discussion on elevating operations with effective resource management. And what we usually like to do is just get a bit of a sense for who is joining us today in this virtual room. So we've prepared a little poll, which I'm going to launch right now. And I invite you to just share how this topic relates to you. Give me one moment. Where did it go? I saw it earlier. One moment. If I can't find it, that's okay. We will improvise. Irina, if you could launch it, feel free. Otherwise, I'm just going to share the question and you can maybe use the chat to check in. We would like to know from you, what's your biggest challenge in managing resources effectively? Perfect. Thank you for having my back. Always good to have a strong team. So what's your biggest challenge in managing resources effectively? So feel free to either check one of the boxes, balancing supply and demand, aligning skills with project needs, tracking real-time resource data, improving team communication, or even comment in the chat if it's something else. And this is just a little way of getting warmed up for our discussion today. So maybe a few more seconds. And Irina, you might be able to see if we have some answers. Yes, perfect. We've got the beautiful analysis. So we've got a winner of the biggest challenge with managing resources effectively being balancing supply and demand with 43%. And then this is being followed by tracking real-time resource data, 29%, and 14% both for aligning skills with project needs and improving team communication. Thank you so, so much for checking in. Also, I can see there's one answer in the chat from Antoine. Thank you so much. Adapt our strategy with capacity planning in the next few weeks and months. That's very interesting. Awesome. So this is us getting warmed up. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing some insights. This webinar is part of RUN's webinar series called LEAP, Igniting the Future of Resource Management. And through this program, we are trying to reinvent the traditional approach to resource management and help unpack fresh and inspiring perspectives for the resource management community, for all of us, on how this could look like. This webinar is brought to you by RUN. RUN offers a resource management software solving the very challenge of matching supply and demand. So finding the best suited people for the jobs and projects at hand. We'll use the last 15 to 20 minutes for questions and answers from you. So feel free, as you're listening in, to capture any questions in the Q&A section of Zoom webinar. Also, feel free to use the chat as you've just done. Also use any reactions. I've also seen some hearts fly up. That always makes it a lot more interactive for us. We love to hear from you in one way or another. So that would be great. Next up, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today's wonderful panelists, Nicole Tiefensee and Nicola Armstrong. It's fantastic to welcome Nicole Tiefensee as a COO and co-founder of RUN. Nicole brings a strategic perspective shaped by 15 years of tech industry experience and a global career. Her expertise in leading agile teams and managing complex resource allocation challenges gives her a unique ability to address the big picture opportunities in resource management. Nicole actually kicked off this webinar series in August last year together with Tim Copeland, Run's CEO, when we dove into the insights gained by both through having spoken to over 1,000 resource managers over the past years. So feel free to check that one out. It was an absolute highlight. So Nicole, it's so exciting to have you back here on the LEAP program.
Awesome, great to be here, and well done on pronouncing my name.
Yeah, I'm lucky I'm German, so that's an advantage. And we're also so excited to have Nicola, an experienced resource manager at NCS Australia, with us today. She has a rich background in human resource management, including experience at 2 of the Big Four accounting firms. With a people-first philosophy, she specializes in building high-performing teams and fostering dynamic work environments. Nicola, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the webinar. A very warm welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here today with you all, and looking forward to sharing this journey and some insights into operations within resource management.
Beautiful. So what we'll do in our webinar today is we will define operations and outline the goals of the function to kick us off. We will understand why operational efficiency is important, especially for resource managers. And mostly we'll look into operational efficiency best practices and how resource management can help leverage these. So without further ado, let's kick right into things. First of all, my question to you, Nicole, is operations. The term itself can mean so many different things. How do you define operations, and what are the goals of the function?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and you're right. I mean, it can mean a lot of things. So I consider operations really as the backbone of an organization. Really ensures that all the moving parts of the business are aligned and working well together, and that includes setting up, managing, optimizing your resources, of course, including your people resources, but it could also be materials, equipment, managing and optimizing your systems and your processes so you can deliver value more efficiently, essentially. When we're looking at what the goals are, I think there is probably different goals, I would say, depending on what industry you're in, or whether you kind of, I think, sell a product or a service or both, will probably be slightly different. And also very much depends, I think, on what stage of the business you're in. So if you're working for a startup like I do here in Run, I'd say the goals of operations is a lot about building foundational systems. Yeah, you're putting the systems in place so people can work well together. As a quick example, I guess when we were hiring our first people at Run, we were like, oh, how are we going to pay them? We can't really hand them like a paper bag with some money, so we'll need to set up some payroll systems to get things going. So foundation building. I think if you're in more of an established organization, maybe kind of Nicola, kind of where you're at, I think yeah, the focus of operations shifts a bit more to optimization. So really improving those processes. If I kind of keep with my payroll example, currently at Run we have a whopping 4 different payroll systems in place for our New Zealand team, our Canadian team, our US team, and we've got staff in Europe as well. So yeah, lots of optimization potential there, and a quite fun project for me to look forward to next year.
Fantastic. Thanks for kicking us off. So what I'm hearing you say is operations is the backbone. Initially, in a smaller context, it's about building the foundational systems. And as an organization matures and grows, it is more and more about optimization and efficiency. That's a beautiful definition. Thank you so much. I'm curious, Nicola, if there's anything you would like to add from your perspective?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in terms of operations from a resource management perspective is really about, for me in my role, is how do I effectively coordinate people processes and tools with the right talent that's available at the right time when it's needed for the business. So making sure that we are supporting some of those strategic accounts with our most talented people within the business, or looking at ways in which we can potentially look at our resourcing structure for those engagements, and what I like to call a little bit of Tetris, and sort of moving people within the organisation to fit those roles as best as possible. So whether that is, upskilling or backfilling roles, to make sure that we are meeting the client's needs and maximising profits as best as possible.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for the great addition. And I love your structure of people, process, and tools. I think we'll come back to that a little later. And also your connotation of supporting the strategic goals, right? Through the kind of way people, processes, and tools are laid out in the organization. I think that's very, very wise. So when we now look at the resource manager in this context, what is the role of resource management when it comes to operations? Nicole, could you start perhaps?
Yeah, I think it plays a really, really important role. I mean, Nicola already touched on that a little bit. I think especially in businesses where people are your biggest asset, and you could argue that it's essentially every business, right? As Nicola said, having the right people with the right skills in the right roles at the right time, that isn't just operationally effective and efficient. I think it's also really, really powerful and can be a huge competitive advantage for businesses. The other thing I would add is kind of, I guess, looking at it from more of a strategic lens. What we are seeing, I think traditionally, the resource management function's been a bit more tactical, looking at projects and looking at finding the right people for projects and filling some of those immediate needs. What we've been seeing at Run and the people and the customers that come to us, that while that is really, really important, the strategic lens and angle is becoming a lot more important. So C-suite is taking notice, and they're really recognizing that not just that financial impact that resource management can bring, but also the efficiency and the productivity gains.
Amazing. And this is such a repeating theme that comes up in almost every webinar. So thank you for highlighting that, the kind of shift from being limited to the tactical side to also now maturing into a more strategic partner, the resource manager as a strategic partner to the business. So as a result, also the role in the space of operations basically elevates and expands, which is beautiful. Nicola, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I guess the more in which we're going in technology wise, the developments with AI, having that really people first, human centered approach is becoming more and more important in today's society, and how we can elevate within our business to provide a structure that both supports the technology but also supports our people within the business. As Nicole said, our people are our most important asset. So without them, we can't do our day-to-day roles. So I think as a resource manager and as operations, coming together to look at ways in which we can invest in our people with the technology and the operational model to help support all of those is a really effective way of, I guess, making a more efficient business run more effectively. So whether it's having a skills map as well, so providing an audit of all the skills within your organization, having a structured map of where those gaps are as well, that misalignment within the market, and how you can sort of improve that within your organization moving forward to become more cost effective and bring in the best people to your business, and making sure that you sort of really look at ways in which to keep your resources engaged as well within the organization is really important. So just keeping in touch with them, those one-on-one connections are really crucial, and looking at ways in which you can promote within is also another key ingredient to that.
Beautiful.
And
Thank you.
I think it's correct to that the resource management isn't in a really, or resource managers, the resource management office isn't a really unique spot within the organization. I think it sits at really the heart of things, like at that kind of crossroad of some key value streams, right? And you've got the delivery side with all your projects and initiatives coming in, so that demand, and then you've got your people stream, and to Nicola's point is the kind of, the talent acquisition, the hiring, the onboarding, the development of the resources, the skills development, and all that. So as a resource managers, you have that unique view on both of them, and bringing both of them together.
Absolutely. So we touched a lot on operational efficiency and that being a key goal. So what exactly do we mean when we talk about operational efficiency? Can you just maybe try to summarize operational efficiency? Nicole, why don't you start?
I think in a I guess a nutshell, probably be achieving more with less. So I guess getting more output with the same input, and the input in this case being mostly people and resources, or kind of the flip side might be to actually achieve the same output with less or more optimized input. So I think the first thing that usually comes to mind when people think about operational efficiencies often it's the cost savings, and it's the revenue gains, right? And the being more profitable as a business, especially if you're in professional services. And I think that plays a really, really big part of, obviously, we're in the business of making money after all. But it's also really about improving the outcome. So the higher quality products and services, better and faster delivery, and then to Nicola's point as well, that happier team, right? So if you can eliminate some of those manual workflows and automate some of that, you have more time to actually spend on the human side.
Amazing, thank you.
And I think as well, just jumping on the back end of that, when you have resources on projects that they really excel at, they automatically start to produce more efficient work. So in hand, that sort of goes back to your cost-effective ways in which you are looking at the business, because you are providing a better service to your clients, which then again keeps them coming back to you. So you're getting more business out of that client again and again, because you're building such great relationships with your clients, and continue to have that reputation uphold. Whereas if you have, resources that are hating the job that they're doing, they're not enjoying it, they're going to dampen that relationship that you have with your key clients, and then that becomes detrimental to your bottom line.
That's absolutely it. So I think we've laid a really strong foundation as to why operations as a function is super critical, and the benefits the business has from a strong operational efficiency focus. So now let's dive right into the heart of our conversation. How can resource management help elevate operations? Let's dive into some of the best practices that you have come across. And Nicole, I'm going to ask you to kick us off. How can resource management help elevate operations?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and then there's a lot to it, and so we'll dive into it. I think one thing to mention again, like obviously I'm looking at it more from a, I guess more the kind of strategic lens, and then there is the technical day to day. But I think there is three key areas, right? There is the people side. There is the utilization side, and there's the streamlining your processes, and again there is, I guess, more you can, like, the resource management overall helps you to streamline your overall business processes, but then you can just as the resource management process itself, you can make that more efficient, right, in itself. And then we do have all that the technology and data that binds it all together. But maybe we can maybe kick into the people side and the utilization side. I might hand over to Nicola to start off with, and then I'll put a few bits and pieces in.
Thanks, Nicole. And yes, definitely let's start off with people. So people, as I like to say, are the heart of our business. They're the heartbeat that keeps us continually running. So I think investing in them is foremost the most important thing to be doing. So whether it is their development, personal development with upskilling, so making sure that your business really has a structure in place that helps them to upskill. And then secondly, having those one-on-one conversations is really key as well, to just understanding your people as best as possible, whether it's their career goals that they're working towards, or coming back to their well-being, making sure that they're not burning out or overwhelmed by the types of projects they are involved in. And making sure that they are, again, meeting their KPI targets. I think that's also really important. So you can look at that in ways of burnout as well. So if you see them, at 110 or 130%, when their utilization target should only be 70%, we should be looking to understand, okay, this person week on week is working 50 hours. This is not sustainable. What can we do? Like, what type of strategies can we put in place to help support them? So whether it is bringing additional support onto that project, or allowing them to roll off and backfilling that position to give them a chance to sort of reset and refresh. And then in turn, working with their practice leads or their line managers to understand, are they looking to go up for promotions, and really just understanding the resources as best as possible to support them at the end of the day, I think is really key to driving some of that success. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you can kind of promote from within, right, or upskill your existing team, that's big, right? You then don't have to go out and hire new people into the business. Sometimes you have to, but it's also expensive. So investing in the people that you have, I think, is really, really crucial. But yeah, essentially it comes down to aligning, right, the right people to the right work, and making sure it's balanced. So to your point, Nicola, not being overutilized, people not being underutilized, because both of it is not great, right? Like, if you're overutilized, to your point, you burn your people out. If you're underutilized, you might be sitting there and not being challenged, or not having anything meaningful to do. So finding that right level is really important. And then looking at the people on the bench as well. So actually, I guess, being on the bench, not having any kind of project work allocated or assigned.
Yeah, and I think that in turn as well, in regards to those individuals that are on the bench, it can be really challenging for them to stay motivated if they haven't got a structure in place of what to work on. So whether they are involved in upskilling for an upcoming engagement that might be coming through to the business, or actually creating a strategic internal project for them to support, which internally helps the business to grow or improve one of their existing processes that needs uplifting. So looking at ways in which you can still keep those people on the bench really motivated and help them from, potentially leaving the business if they're not getting the work that's providing them value or meaning towards their goals.
Yeah, and then I guess from a more operational or I guess efficiency point of view, having people on the bench is just also very expensive. Especially, I mean, I'm looking at it more from the professional services lens. Again, if you're doing work for external customers, actually even cheaper to have someone working on an unprofitable project than, or to your point, actually taking the opportunity to do internal work or do like use that time for upskilling and learning.
100%. I'm just curious, Nicola, you mentioned the one-on-one check-ins, which I see a lot of value in. If we are now looking at the ratio of a resource manager, usually it's something between one resource manager is responsible for maybe 50 to 300 resources, depending on the organization's size and setup. How do you actually cater for those one-on-ones if you have such a wide range of people to serve?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I've done in my current role and in my past roles is focusing firstly on those individuals that are on the bench. So given that they do have that available time, you can really connect in with them and understand their career goals as best as possible and looking at ways in which you can unlock their true potential. And then I guess in terms of, obviously I've looked after resource teams of up to 300. So it can be a bit of a challenge to speak to every single one of them on a day-to-day basis. So what I've found really valuable is having the, I guess you could say, the technology in place to help support the skills that they have. Whether it's their current skills or whether they're completing badges, for example, that they're interested in, which can sort of help you to look at, okay, look, they've just done an AWS certification. That's really fantastic. There's a new role that's come through to the business. This might be a great opportunity for them to get their first project and things like that. And it sort of triggers your memory as well when you go and look in those systems. Okay, yeah, Tom told me last week that he, did X, Y, Z, but then you might have forgotten a few weeks later. At least you can go into that tool that you have with all the skills and CVs and sort of refresh your mind with that.
Amazing. I can already sense there is so much to cover on the people side, which is amazing. Maybe let's jump into the process arena just to allow a little bit of time for process and tech and data as well. And maybe if the audience is curious to learn anything else in the space of people, feel free to put a question into the Q&A and we're most happy to pick that up. So in the process area, what can resource management actually help with here, Nicole?
Again, there's so much, right? And it kind of also, I think, ties back to people in a lot of ways. I think in terms of process, for me, obviously, in my role, I'm often looking at it more from a bit of a higher level and doing more, I guess, capacity planning. So kind of looking into the future. So having a really good kind of, I guess, process in place to kind of determine, already kind of ahead of time what is that incoming demand, what are those kind of core initiatives you need to be working on, getting some early insights into what the, who you need, what type of people you would need to fulfill that work and those projects, and then looking ahead and see, well, how are we going to look like in 6 to 12 months? Do we actually do we have the people in house, right? Do we need to upskill? Do we need to hire in? So that really helps move from being very reactive. So if you don't have these kind of processes and feedback loops in place, you're constantly reacting to a more, I guess, strategic approach of looking at things. So for me, that is a key process, long-term planning process. And forecasting obviously ties in with that. And I think we had just kind of last month a really great kind of session on the topic of forecasting as well.
Absolutely, mission critical forecasting. So I'm glad you also mentioned it here as a lever to help with the process space. What else would you like to add, Nicola?
I think just in terms of having your processes streamlined is a really great way to provide consistent data, I guess you could call it. So in resource management, having real-time data and accurate data is very important to be able to do our job strategically and effectively. So ensuring, for me, having a one source of truth is where I can forecast, upcoming projects, understanding the demand coming through the business, and aligning that supply and demand as best as possible to meet those client needs to the business. So resource allocation obviously comes in the back of that. So using those processes to help elevate your resource allocations. So having those processes streamlined obviously helps you with that. So I guess for me, standardizing those processes, documenting those. So if you are in the early stages of your resource management function, making sure that you do document everything that you have in place, whether it's, starting with an Excel spreadsheet for your resource allocation is a good place to start. And then as you mature over time, you'll have those systems to help support you with your capacity planning and your forecasting. I've come from obviously different number of organizations that have different number of tools as well to look at those capacity planning and workforce planning as well. So I think it's just really understanding what works best for your organization and then ideating on that every single time and being agile with that is one way to help support the business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think I mentioned earlier how resource management sits at the heart of some critical business processes. That also means that a lot of different people need to get involved in making sure that the data that you use to make decisions on is up to date, right? We have the HR team coming in, providing some of the skills data, the jobs, the contract, the setup and all that. And we've got the finance team coming in with all this is what people are costing us, the charge out rates. We've got the project managers and the project team coming in from the demand side, right? And then the kind of resource managers orchestrating it all. So you need to have really good I guess alignment and processes in place to make sure that data flows into ideally one central system somewhere, one single source of truth, to really kind of, because that will then empower you to make really good decisions.
Amazing. And on that, I know, Nicola, in our prep sessions, you've mentioned something that you do to align with some of these key stakeholders. So maybe could you just share how you're getting that alignment actually implemented in reality? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the business that I've just started with, we've integrated from 8 different entities, and the resource management function is quite at an early stage, so about 1 year to 2 years old. So a lot of the processes that we are putting in place are constantly being evolved and adapted based on our experience through testing them. We're going all in, failing if we need to fail, but we're just making sure that we are adapting as best as possible to the new current environment so that we can get to that end state where our business is already thriving now, but we want to take it to that next level. So what we've currently put in place is we have weekly meetings with what I call our sales and marketing team. And on the back of those meetings, so they're really focused on the demand coming through to the business. And that new process was put in place for about 4 weeks. And off the back of that, it was just constantly getting feedback on how those sessions were running, where we needed to improve on those existing processes that were in place, just to ensure that we were getting the most accurate data. So, for example, some of our markets team, were only giving us half of the job description of what they needed to, perform that role at the client site. But unless we have all the information, we can't provide them the best resource for that role. So it's just getting on that call and just really understanding in those meetings, what they're wanting from us and what we're wanting from them, to really provide that transparent and that really clear communication between the different stakeholders to get the best outcome out of those meetings.
I love it so much. And I think that's quite rare, actually, that the resource management function is in communication with the sales/growth side of things. And I think having that link is such an easy win. It's so helpful for both sides to help create better client outcomes. So I'm so happy and impressed that you're doing this already. And I hope that a lot of resource managers can take this away as something super valuable and not that hard to do. It's just something you have to actually be aware of. So thank you for sharing that concrete example, Nicola. I love it. Now we're already coming close to our Q&A time, and I've seen someone has been very wonderful at putting in questions. Thank you, Kigis. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. So feel free to add some more questions because we will come to them in just a moment. Now let's just wrap up with the third pillar of operations and operational efficiency, being tech and data. We've covered it a little bit, but what else would you like to share? And Nicole, I'm going to ask you to kick off.
Yeah, so we did touch on it a little bit already. I think the one key thing for me is just really having the one source of truth is really important when it comes to, I guess, your whatever kind of system you're using, because as soon as you start kind of doing resource management in multiple places, then again, like you don't have that wider view of what's actually going on in the organization anymore. So having, I think, one source of truth is really important. As I mentioned earlier, having that real-time data coming in from all these multiple sources, ideally in an automated fashion, so that it gets even kind of more streamlined. So I think that's a big one, because all that enables then more data-driven decision making, right? You really kind of have it in front of you. I think those are two key pieces. I think for me, the big thing is around the data, and that's what we hear from our customers over and over again. And I'm sure, Nicola, probably you've got some stories to tell there as well from your perspective, is that kind of the garbage in, garbage out kind of concept, right? So keeping that really streamlined and tight is super important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well with emerging technologies like AI, as you mentioned, and machine learning, is really going to be a big player in the market, especially in resource management, because we can use AI to help us in predicting project needs and how we can allocate resources more effectively, which can potentially, the way in which you can model or I guess help AI to behave is to reduce some of those biases that are put in place by potentially project managers or project leads. So where we can, look at a project, use AI and say, hey, we actually need a female specifically for this engagement, and how AI can spit out that potential resource for us to make better decisions to put forward those people for those engagements. In the past, we've used a fantastic tool called Eightfolds, which is powered by powered by AI. And yeah, it just really effectively helps you to match employees across the business more effectively. So I think there's lots of different tools out there as well. Obviously Run is a fantastic tool. There's Monday.com as another example of resource management tools that do provide you that real-time data, so that you can help make more informed decisions, because on a day-to-day basis, things are constantly changing, and you need to make sure that you're providing that most up-to-date and accurate information. So yeah, I think that's sort of it.
Nice, thank you. And I'm so curious to see the years ahead and how actually AI is going to support it. So let's wait and see. Cool. Let's move over to the Q&A. We've got 3 questions in here. Also, dear audience, feel free to upvote the questions that you find most interesting, and I can certainly use that prioritization in the kind of sequence. I'm picking the questions. So the first question from Kigas is how to manage change management when implementing resource management from scratch in an organization. I can already see you nodding, Nicole, so please kick us off.
Yes, I think change management is a huge topic. I guess with any a new system or a tool that you're implementing, and Runwell involved a lot in our customers' introduction of resource management into the organization and implementing tooling. I think we can probably do a whole webinar just on the topic of change management. Well, we actually did one, I think, a little while ago. But I think some of the key things is, for me, is starting with really having that a really kind of clear vision of, why are we doing this as an organization? What are the outcomes we are expecting here? Getting that buy-in from everyone, especially from, I think, kind of leadership first off, right? But then also, again, like there's a lot of people involved in this, so getting buy-in from all the different people that will need to feed into that new system. There might be some people who might be a little bit resistant to that change, or who have done resource management in one form or the other in their own, I guess, department or for their own projects, and they're like, well, I'm doing this already. Why do I need to change? Yeah, and then really kind of looking at, well, what's the developing that plan, right? How are we going to go about rolling it out? What is the data that we need? What is the tools and the processes that we need to put in place? And then communicating all that, right? And Nicola touched on that a little bit, of these feedback loops, making sure there is feedback loops in place for people to check in, making sure people are comfortable with what's happening. People have some avenues to provide their feedback and their input, and roll it out, and then monitor, adjust as you go along.
Yeah, and I think it's all about taking them along that change journey, and really creating a story or a narrative along that, from your current state to the future state of where you want to get that business to. Change can be such a complex process to sort of initiate and be able to transform your business successfully is quite a challenge, and especially in integrating a resource management function within an organization. As Nicole said, having those feedback loops are really critical. You know, conducting surveys across the business is another really great tool to use when you are running a change management program. And also as well, I think something that's worked really well for me in the past is just stopping along the way and celebrating those small wins is something that really helps drive that motivation and that momentum to keep going along that journey, because as Nicole said as well, it can be a real challenge for people because they are resistant to that change. People think that you're taking away their job. It's like, no, I've been doing that. Why do you need to come in and take that role from me? But it's allowing to free up their time to do more strategic things that align with their specific role, so that us as resource managers can come in and do our role essentially. Some tips to help.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. And everything that has to do with when it comes to operational efficiencies and putting processes and efficiency measures in place, there's always that often that fear, right? I know you can see it with AI as well. Well, what will that do to my job? But to your point, it's like, well, you're freeing up some time for you to do more valuable things with your time.
Amazing. And maybe also what you could do is identify those champions who embrace the change and maybe have an informal network of those change agents to support, also offering some kind of space for questions and answers and to demo the new systems you're putting in place for your resource management, for people to have a low barrier to get in touch with it and actually, figure it out before the big change is coming, so that they feel like they're ahead of the curve, can also help to mitigate those fears, which are natural to come up. Awesome. Well, thanks both of you for your answers, and thanks Keegas for question number 1. We're going to jump into question number 2, which is specifically for you, Nicole. What do you think are components of effective capacity planning?
Oh, yeah, good question. So obviously capacity planning, more concerned with the higher level, longer term, making sure you've got the right people for those initiatives that you're running. I think first of all, I would say starting with what are the key inputs, right? And for me, I was like, as my role as the CEO, often that's the first kind of step for me is, well, what is our vision, what is our mission, what are the strategic goals actually that we as a business are trying to achieve. So that's one. And then the second step, looking at what are the initiatives that we then need to run as a business to achieve those objectives or those business objectives. And then thirdly, looking at and do we have the right people with the right skills, again, or location, that plays a big kind of part of it as well. And then from there, making sure you've got it matched up. And if you don't have anyone else in-house, starting to kick off some of those recruiting and recruiting processes. So yeah, I think kind of always starting with the high level and the vision, and then kind of working your way down. Obviously, again, really, really important. You actually have some systems and processes in place that can show you some of the data, right? They can show you what the capacity is, so they can show you what your people's skills are. So if you don't have that in place, then it's really, really hard to do that. So there's some foundational work, actually, that needs to happen, depending on how mature your resource management function is across. So if you're still starting out, then it's a lot of building work, right? Getting that data, getting all that in place, so that you can kind of move to that next level. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it has become very clear. And even though the question was pointed to Nicole, is there anything you would like to add to this question?
I think, yeah, Nicole covered most of it off, but I think just in terms of capacity planning, it does go in hand with your workforce planning. So demand forecasting is really important to understand what your current supply and demand is. So where you have resource shortages. So say, for instance, at the moment, if I was to look at my current bench, how can we sort of potentially upskill them in time for the amount of demand coming through to the business, or do we need to go to TA to discuss hiring for those future roles? Or if we've got the opposite end where we've got a specific skill that's, quite hot in the market at the moment, and all of our clients are wanting resources with this skill, how can we sort of pre-plan for those roles coming up through the business as well? So really looking at ways in which you can track your skills, having a skills matrix I've found really crucial in understanding your capacity as best as possible, and even ways in which you can use your for me, for example, the operating model in terms of looking whether it's nationally or across our Asia Pac to capacity planned with a different model of, 3 people onshore and then 2 people offshore as well, to sort of close out that gap of those skills shortages within the business as well. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you both very much for your answers. And lastly, this question is pointed to you, Nicola. What's your recommendation for demand planning? So yeah, you might have covered that a little bit just now. Is there anything you would like to add?
So I guess just in terms of demand planning, there's different ways to go about it. I think for me, it's having the tools in place to help me allocate. So I sort of go from most urgent to the least urgent in terms of priority of demand coming through to the business. So it's focusing on, what practice is it coming from, what's the start dates, what's the percentage of it, and I guess in terms of the strategic alignment to the business as well. So mapping those key resources to those strategic accounts is obviously a priority to meet those demands as well. But yeah, that's sort of it in terms of managing demand within a business can be different from organizations based on the tools that you have in place. So yeah.
Maybe just a follow-up question on that one. How do you actually identify the most urgent projects? Because I can see that this very much depends on the perspective you have. You have different C-suite members with different strategic ambitions. So I wonder, how do you know, how do you distill the real essence as a resource manager amongst these different priorities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the way I look at different priorities can be based on different dollar values coming through to the business, as one example. So if you've got a client that's looking for a squad of people to deliver a piece of work, whether it's an implementation of, Workday, for example, and they need, 50 or 10 people to be a part of this project that's going to bring in, $1 to $2 million over another urgent priority client, for example, that may be bringing you $50 of work for that 2 weeks of that project. It's sort of looking at different demand coming through, and obviously having that buy-in as well from the leadership team, saying, hey, look, we've got our strategic accounts, these take priority. It may be different for your organization, but for me, I've got 5 key strategic accounts that I need to deliver on. So if they came in first over a small client that was just won a small piece of work, that's just sort of how I align my demand, but it may be different for you.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nicole, I'm curious to pick
Yeah.
your brain.
And it's coming from that, I think from Uringer, more from the professional services side, right? There is you've got clients, and then there is a very kind of direct link, right, from your utilization to your of people to the revenue. So yeah, kind of like your I guess accounts will often take, you know, preference there, and that gives you kind of a bit of an indication of what to go for first. If you're more in a product business like Run, I think it comes down to, as I mentioned earlier, it's really kind of like what are the strategic goals that we've set as a company. What is the impact we want to create, and then aligning on that, and hopefully the entire C-suite and leadership team is aligned on that. So that's really, really important, right? Having that alignment, and then driving that down from there. What also helps is if you have, again, like the tooling in place, if you're able to do some scenario modeling as well, to kind of see, well, what if I put these people on this project, and what if I run this project later? What is the outcome of that, and how are we kind of best looking in terms of our setup? Yeah.
Amazing, wonderful. And thanks both of you for your answers, and thanks for the great question. I see there's just one last one popping up. We've got a few minutes left, so maybe we can make this a quick round. Kigis is asking you, Nicole, your last minute thoughts on return on investment if an organization wants to implement resource management tool.
Return on investment, I think, as I said, like, especially again, if we're looking at from the professional service lens, having a tool in place that helps you optimize your resources, makes things visible, so you can really kind of dive into that utilization is huge. So you'll be able to see savings straight away, right? Because even just like doing minimal adjustments and optimizing things can have a huge outcome. Like, again, like to Nicola's point earlier, if I prioritize my most profitable customers, essentially, and being able to see that is really huge. But then if you like the cost savings of, again, like being able to again have a really high productivity, have the right people on the right job, yeah, it's huge. That was really quick.
Nicola, do you want to add something?
I was just going to quickly add on the back of that might come into play as well, is the benefits of having a resource management tool is you can forecast as well. So say, for instance, you forecasted your resources to be on 100% on an engagement for 4 weeks. You can also identify if they haven't been on that engagement for that time. So looking at your actuals versus your forecasted planned hours, you can really help to identify those leakages in revenue on a weekly and monthly basis. So it's really great to track your finances as well in that regards.
Fantastic. And I just remember Laura Smith once shared in our webinar how 1% of utilization increase relates to at least in depending on the context, in her context, it was about $1 million of revenue of money. So yeah, you can basically look at how much does 1% of utilization increase relate to in terms of dollar value, and then the case, I think, becomes very, very clear. If you can help the resource manager be a little bit more effective, it will have a tremendous impact on the financials. Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, for so generously sharing your insights with us today. Thanks to the audience. Thanks for Kigis. You've been a star in asking questions. It's super, super enjoyable to have So many questions come up. I would just like to quickly share with you what's happening in the new year. So in December, we're taking a little Christmas break, and we're hoping you have a beautiful time off and get to recharge. And in January, we will be back. The LEAP webinar will be focusing on resource management trends and predictions for 2025. This will be a super inspiring session. We will dive into what makes resource management a dream job. What do we love about it? What excites us? What are we sensing in terms of what's ahead in the new year? What are some of the trends and predictions for 2025? So we would love to welcome you back for that one. As for now, thanks all of you for joining us. I hope Nicola and Nicole, you have a beautiful rest of your evening. And for people in Europe, I hope you have a great start to the day, wherever you are in the world. Take good care. Have a beautiful Christmas period. And yeah, looking forward to welcoming you back soon. Take care. Bye-bye.